Everything is growing, changing, and evolving, even you. From the student nurse to the baby nurse, the veteran nurse, off the bedside and into entrepreneurship, you have arrived and you have evolved. So, welcome to the Evolve Nurse Podcast. I'm your host, Keish, and we'll get right into this episode. First and foremost, y'all, I am in Florida and I am so grateful that the storm didn't impact me in a way that it impacted so many other people. I can only be super grateful for that. There are people who lost their lives, they lost their hometowns. They some people are still without electricity. So some people are going on 7, 8 days without electricity. And it is so saddening how I'm looking at like cities that I've ridden through. Like I recently rode through Asheville and that city is almost wiped from the map. There's no way in and no way out. They have nurses there. They dispatch nurses to the area. And some people said that, they have no water, they have no way of communicating. And so it's no telling what will happen with the nurses who were brave enough to go and fight the fight on the front lines for that city, because that it takes a lot to leave your family and go out into the community and not know whether you're going to make it home or not. And that goes for the linemen as well. We want to give a special thanks to the linemen who are going out, who are putting their lives in danger every single day, getting up on those poles, not knowing if it's a line or a wire that could probably end their lives. I've seen so many people being hit by cars that are driving fast, trucks that are driving fast. So I would like to say to people, slow down. This is a time where we need to slow down. Like it is to work where I work and see a lot of these people come in through our OR, a lot of the people who pass away, the children who were harmed and hurt during this time. It has been a lot. Okay. It has been a lot to hear or see people who were affected from the storm come in, even coming in from exhaustion, like car accidents that happen probably from exhaustion, and people not knowing where they're going to be in the next few weeks or the next few months because their homes have literally been washed away. So I would like to say to those who have lost, I send all my condolences to you. It is a very hard time, but that is why I'm creating this episode today, because I know there are people who are still in nursing school that are struggling right now. And yeah, we're going to get right into this episode. So, y'all, this episode is on grief in nursing school. And I have not heard anybody talk about this subject, but it's something that happens frequently. And if you go to my episode with the Every Step nurse, we briefly touch on our experiences with grief in nursing school. And so, first and foremost, to those who have lost somebody, my condolences to you. I know how it feels to lose somebody and not know how to package up that grief and act like everything is okay, and or let it all out. And what the young kids say, crash out. You don't know what to do with those emotions. So I'm going to give you my story. So when I was in nursing school, I was coming into my senior year, like end of junior year, coming into my senior year. And my fiance's younger sister was murdered. And I remember the day. I was sitting downstairs studying at our kitchen table because that's where I normally studied. My fiance, he was traveling back and forth from Tampa to Georgia. And at this point, I think he had like a job in Tallahassee. So my house was closer than his house. So he was staying with us. And so we get a phone call and they're like, hey, we need you to come right now. We need you to come here right now. Your sister has been shot. And so I got this instant uneasy feeling. They didn't detail us with a lot of information because you have to understand when somebody's going through something as traumatic as that. There are really no words to say except for get here now. So we're riding and he's like, maybe she just got, shot in the arm or something like that. And I'm like, even if she just got shot in the arm, like that can be a very traumatic situation for somebody who's that young. And she was coming into her senior year. So she was in her senior year about to graduate, and we get to the hospital. And nobody prepped me for this, right? Nobody prepped me for this. His uncle pulled him to the side and I went to the back. I didn't know it was a TBI. I didn't know that she had been I didn't know that it was to that extent, right? Sorry, y'all. I didn't know that it was to that extent. But I wasn't prepped. So I go in and I'm looking at everything that's going on. And now this is a hospital at the time that I worked at. So I was a nurse extern at this hospital. So I know the staff a little bit. So I'm asking some questions and I'm really unsure as to what the other steps are going to be. But essentially, she was too unstable to leave that hospital. And her parents ended up making the decision to I'm sorry, y'all. Her parents ended up making the decision to let her go, which was something that was the hardest decision for a parent to have to make. Not a very easy decision at all. But just knowing that they had determined her brain dead. And yeah, so that's the story. That's the preface. Okay. That is the preface to what I'm about to talk to you about. So I'm still in nursing school. How do I finagle going through this grief process and also doing nursing school, or being like, you know what, I'm going to let grief drown me almost and not get to where I want to go? So this was not the best option to take. And I know there are so many people who do this. I packaged it up and I set it to the side. Of course, I did a lot of crying. I did a lot of reminiscing. I did a lot of the feelings and emotions. I didn't not feel, but I knew that in order for me to get through the program, I had already gone through some like experiences where I just didn't feel good about myself in the program. So I had worked through those emotions. And then now this comes along and now I have to basically stop my grieving process and go hard in school. And so that's what I did. I packaged it up and I moved forward. And then on top of that, y'all, let me tell you what my test was about. Neuro and TBIs. So I'm in my test, right? And I'm getting all these questions about TBIs, about what to do, about how to position, about, ICF, about all of the things. Like ICP. I am in this test distraught because nobody knows that I'm dealing with this. No, nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody knows that I'm dealing with this because I packaged it up and I put it to the side so that I could at least make it through my test. So I made it through my test. I made a very good grade because, of course, this is real life experience for me now. And I'm still like just going through the motions of school. Just everything is daunting at this point, right? Everything feels like a lot. But I packaged it up. I put it to the side. I made it through my program. And then I get to where I am now and then recognize that I never properly grieved my sister in law's passing. Somebody, I was in her life for 11, almost 12 years. Every year I would take her school shopping. Except for that last year because she wanted to go school shopping with her friends because they get grown, they want to go out with their friends or what have you. So she wanted to go shopping with her friends. And that's what she did. She went school shopping with her friends that year. And so I packaged it up, moved on, and did not recognize that I did not grieve. I did not work through the process. I just kept going. And a lot of us do that. A lot of us just keep going. Like, we don't have the luxury of taking time off. Nursing school, you ain't got no time off. What? Time off? Where? Time off? And you can structure getting time off. You can decide that you want to drop out. You want to drop the course and then come back later on. You can decide that, this isn't something for you right now. You could go on about your business and decide to do the grief work that you need to do. Um, that was just something that I did, and I do not, 0 out of 10, do not recommend. I don't recommend you not dealing with the things. I am of the belief that as soon as things like that happen, not only should you enter into therapy, hopefully you already have a therapist and you're able to work through those emotions, because it is so hard to even pinpoint what emotions are going where. And you have to recognize that with grief comes anger. With grief comes anger. With grief comes depression. With grief comes all the things, rage. Like, with grief comes a flood of emotions that we have no ability to recognize because we don't have the tools to do it. We don't understand it. And so now that I'm older, now that I've experienced grief again, now that I am actually going through the grief process and giving myself space to feel, I recognize that nursing students we don't even have the luxury of time. How do we incorporate time to grieve into the small amount of time that we have to eat? And that's even if you're eating. um I have noticed, like, some nurses, when I was in nursing school, there will be times where I'll be studying so hard that I would have to be intentional about going to eat. I would have to be like, hold on, Keisha, did you eat today? Did you? And then I will recognize that I did not eat that day. So, as I was saying, I had to be very intentional about everything in my life. So, even if I had to carve out a little sliver of time to eat, I had to eat. So, I know that carving out time for grief, when we're not properly briefed on what grief is going to look like for us, that can be something that just that will go unchecked. So you don't know why you're moving throughout your life the way that you are, and it's because you haven't grieved properly. You don't know why you're so angry at everything, but it's because you haven't grieved properly. So now, at the space that I am now with losing my dad in February, entering into nursing school um in August, I started to deal with grief early on because I knew how it made me feel when I did not grieve the passing of somebody that was very near and dear to my heart. And so, with that being said, like, I had to make sure that I grieved appropriately. And there's no proper way to grieve, but I had to do what was best for me in my grief period, because if I'm going to be 100% honest with you, for a while I have been very angry. Now, do I take that to work? No. But at home, when I sit in how I was treated after my dad passed, and that's a different story for a different day. But and how I had to deal with all of these things on my own, and had to really hone in on being an adult. And, like, I haven't even reached my 30s yet. Like, yeah, I'm an adult, but are you really an adult? Like, it makes you recognize how unadult like you are when your parent passes away, and those the responsibilities of taking care of estate planning or what have you falls on you. Like, once it's all on you to do those things, it's very, very hard. So me having to, and then not to mention, y'all, I was still going through postpartum depression. Like, I was still having like baby blues type of thing. Like, I wasn't even I was just coming up on my year of having my baby when my dad passed away. My baby's birthday was a week before my dad passed. So we were supposed to see him that weekend. And so I was angry, y'all. But when I spoke to people and I asked them questions, I always said, "Hey, look, I'm in my A of grief. Like, I'm very angry right now. Like, I'm going through the things, like I'm in therapy, but I still am a very like I still have some anger, not towards anybody. I didn't throw my anger at people, but I had internalized anger of like finding out my dad had an ailment that he didn't tell me about because he didn't feel like I had time to handle it, or he didn't want to worry me with it. Those are things that also play a huge part in my grief process because I wasn't able to like what I think he was almost like, what is she gonna do? She work hard, she do all the things, she got a baby now. What would I expect for her to do? But at the same time, like, I probably would have increased how much I came home. I was still already coming home at least once or twice a month. But still, like, it makes you feel like you could have done more. So I was doing a lot of beating up on myself. Like, I was on myself really, really hard. And I had to realize that, Keisha, like, you do not have to beat yourself up. Like, you did all that you could. And if he didn't want you to know, you just can only respect that. And learning how to respect my dad's choice of not telling me has been one of the hardest parts of the grieving process. But I say that to say, like, going to school after grieving, after going through all the things, I'm still having grieving points. I still sometimes cry. I still sometimes feel like, my dad was supposed to be here for this. He was supposed to see me do this. He was supposed to see me do that. But in the same sense, had he still been here, would I have made the next step? And I used my grief of my dad. I saw the person that he was and saw that even at the age he was still like on his way back to school, doing some of the things, like always looking for new business ventures or trying to figure out new things. And I'll never forget. And I feel like y'all gonna always hear me reference back to Les Brown because it's one of my favorite inspirational speakers. But when Les Brown said the cemetery is full of untapped potential, I recognized at that point that looking at my dad's life and seeing all that he had done, all that he wanted to do that he didn't get to do, it sparked a flame in me. And it was like, Keisha, you gotta go. If you keep talking about it, you're not gonna do it. So when I talk about grief, my dad's grieving for my dad, it allowed me to see myself. It allowed me to see myself in a way that I didn't think that I would ever see myself. It allowed me to be very honest and transparent about my feelings. That's not something that I wanted to bottle up. I couldn't no longer package that and put it to the side, because not only did I have my baby, not only do I have my partner, not only do I have my family, like, there are people in my life that I don't want to be angry with. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to have internalized anger because my daddy passed away. He didn't tell me his ailment, and now I'm upset because how dare you not loop me in on what's going on with you, and I always loop you in on what's going on with me. Like, the things that I had to work through during that time on top of all the other stuff. And that got to be a story time for another day, but it ain't got nothing to do with nursing. So we just going to move right along. On top of all the other stuff that I dealt with in the midst of my dad passing away, it became a lot. And so I looked at my baby and I said, I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be angry. Like, I did not want to be an angry person because nobody deserved angry Keisha. And even if that angry Keisha didn't come off as angry, like most people would say that I didn't show up, like my friends and stuff would say I didn't show up as angry, but I was very intentional about letting people know, like, look, I'm going through some things, and in the midst of me going through things, it might come off like I'm angry because I am, and I felt like I had the right to be angry because of the things that I was going through or the things that I was dealing with. But I decided to go to therapy. I started with every week for a month, and then I started going once a month. And I would say that that has been one of the best things that I could have done fresh off of my dad passing away. Once he passed away, that next week, I was looking for a therapist. I told her that I was grieving. We matched with each other. I was like, you know what? Look, you need to send me some books on grief. I need the tools. I need to really understand what I'm going through because I don't want to end up being lost in my grief. I don't want to be lost in my grief process. And that's what can happen. A lot of times we can get lost in our grief process. We cannot understand what we're going through. It leads to a lot of mental disease. It leads to depression. It leads to anxiety. You just don't know how to work through those feelings, through those emotions. So going through grief in nursing school, that is compounded, right? Like, you're already going through, and if you've had, I love that I have the stories of nurses who did not have traumatic experiences in nursing school. But for me, think about going through the trauma of nursing school actually and actually going through grief too. So not only do you have that trauma, you have compounded the trauma with your grief, and now you do not know how to deal with what you have going on. That is what happens. Like, you compound what you have going on, and it's not okay. It's not okay because you deserve to have a life where you are able to think through the situations. And if you're in school, I know 9 times out of 10, you can go to your health center and they have a therapist there. Utilize the resources that you have now because when you get out in the real world, it's going to be hard to find them resources, especially if you ain't got no insurance. So go to your health center. Like the first time I went to the therapist at my old school, it was before grief counseling because I had utilized the therapist at my school beforehand because I was having issues with remembering things. And so I was like, you know what? Let me go into therapy. Let's figure some things out. And I figured a lot of things out about myself, which made me a very, very big advocate for therapy, for mental health. But I can say that it does take you being willing to be uncomfortable. And a lot of times we're not willing to be uncomfortable so that we can get comfortable in another space, so that we can see ourselves be great in another space. So what I can say for me is, and I can't speak for anybody else, packaging up my grief and sitting it to the side did nothing for me. It helped me get through nursing school, maybe. But had I dealt with that grief in real time, understood how I felt in real time, I feel like it wouldn't have been as hard as it was for me because I feel like everything was hard. Friendships were hard. My relationship got very hard. Like, everything was hard. Everything felt it just felt, I don't know, like it it felt a way. It felt a way just to deal with that in real time, her not be able to graduate, the person that unalived her not being found or convicted or what have you. A lot came of that situation. So when I had to package it up and put it to the side, and then some days like it comes out, and my fiance, he had his period of grief, and he's like, well, you have to let it out. And I'm like, when I go to counseling, I don't talk about that situation because I packed it up so tight that, like, now I have my dad's situation. So I'm like, what do I talk about today? We only got an hour. We only got an hour. And so with me budgeting, like, this ain't in my budget to be going past the hour. But realistically, y'all, it is not okay for you to package it up and put it to the side. Like, it is gonna come back and it is gonna show up and it's gonna rear its ugly head. It might show up in anger, it might show up in depression. You might shut yourself off from the world, and you don't want to be that person. I promise you don't. I promise you don't. I remember not even wanting to go to my daddy's funeral. Like, I just wanted to lay in my bed. I was head under the cover. Like, I don't want to go. Like, I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want it. Like, I don't want to have to actually deal with this. And so, y'all, I don't know where my camera is at. Y'all, I am recording for both YouTube and Spotify, and I don't know where my camera is. So I have no idea where to look. So this whole time I probably been like shifting my eyes all across the camera. I have no idea where to look. So forgive me if I'm shifting. But I just didn't want to deal with my dad passing away, having to be an adult, having to, like, actually take care of stuff, having to make decisions, having to do all I was mentally exhausted. Like, it's when I tell you I was so exhausted, I literally, what, it's October the 3rd. My daddy passed away February the 9th. And I can tell you, last week was the first time that I did nothing. Last weekend, not even a whole weekend. Last Saturday was a nothing day for me. Like, I just sat. I didn't answer my phone really. I watched TV. I did family stuff. Y'all, why am I crying? That was the first time that I had time to myself, that I wasn't dealing with something. Y'all, last weekend was the first time that I was able to actually have time to myself, do things for myself. So I advise you, if you're in nursing school and you decide that you want to go forth in nursing school and you don't want to take the time off, you want to power through it, I advise you to not bottle it up, deal with it, make the appointment at the therapist. I know it might take time out of you studying, but I promise you that hour of your time will go far. I promise you that if you're open enough to therapy, that it will do some things for you that you didn't expect it to. It'll give you the tools that you need in order to be able to thrive and work well in that grief and give reverence to the people that you lost, but also recognizing that you still have life to live. You still have a purpose to fulfill. You still have all those things. So just making sure that you're going to be the best that you can be. And it's hard to be the best that you can be, knowing that you've lost a very vital link to your life that helped you become the best that you could be. Y'all, I want to say a week or two before my dad passed away is when I had an interview with my new job, my current job. And I remember being on the phone with him, like, I think it may have been the week before, and we were talking about the job that I was at. And it was like my dad always knew the right words to say. And he would always tell me to quit the job. He would always tell me to quit the job. He'll be like, Keisha, you know what you know. You know what you give. You know who you are. And if it's time for you to leave, you know that you're making the best decision possible. And now I don't have that. And so having to grieve without being able to call my daddy and grieve, you were going to be the person that I call and grieve. Like, about, like, if I was going through something, I was supposed to be calling you. I'm not supposed to be feeling like this. That's how I'm feeling. But in all honesty, like, life is a circle. And inside that circle is life and both death and transformation and transition. Like, it's all of the things inside that circle. So it's me being able to give reverence to my dad and appreciate him for who he was in my life, the good, the bad, the ugly, what he taught me. Whether that was through um a observation, or whether that was through his wise words, or whether that was how I saw him show up for other people. Um and how he created a very empathetic spirit within me that allowed me to see people for who they are. And so with that being said, I can only be grateful and thankful. And that's why I decided to go to therapy, because had my dad not prepared me for what death would look like, I wouldn't have been able to go through this. Now, when it happened to me when I was younger with my fiance's sister, my little sister-in-law, I can say I was not prepped for that. My dad had told me over and over again that, the skin that we wear is only a suit. It's like being a fireman. You pull it on and you put it off. And when he normally had that analogy for that. And so when he passed away, I had to sink in that. I had to think about that. Like, my dad always said that this skin that I'm in is nothing. What I am is a spirit. The spirit within me is what is the essence of who I am. So even if I lose all of this, my spirit is unharmed. And so when I recognized that, everything became so much more clear to me. And it allowed me to be able to grieve in a healthy manner. And I can say that I'm still going through the process. There are days where I'm still like, now you could have told me that you had a serious ailment, but he wasn't ready to tell me that. And maybe he was ready to tell me that when I was supposed to see him, but he just didn't make it to that day. So I have to give myself grace, give him grace, give my mom grace, give the people in my life grace, because who, who, who would have thought that my dad would be up out of here? Because I wouldn't. I would. I did not expect that. I would not. I would not. I thought that he was going to be here for my baby. I thought all the things, but in essence, I would like to say, do not package it up. Do not bottle it up, y'all. It is not worth it. It ain't worth it, because you get to my age and it's 5, 6 years later and you still are halted by the grief cycle. You still don't know how to quite work through the things. So if you have lost somebody recently, or not recently, it might be time for you to go and gain the tools that you need in order to better yourself as a person, as a partner, as a parent, as a daughter, as a whatever. You have to put your best foot forward. Now, you can't do and be there for everybody in the way that you used to, because you have to be there for yourself. For my people pleasers out there, you have to at some point be there for yourself, because I'm gonna take this off, because it's extremely important that you hone in on who you are as a person and treat yourself right. We treat all these other people better than we will treat ourselves. So it's time that you put your best foot forward, put your mental health first, and you treat yourself right. Treat yourself appropriately, because there are going to be times where you are going to have to sit in that, and you have to understand what it is like to be alone while grieving, but you also have to utilize your tribe. One thing that my therapist taught me was that you have to look around inside your friend group, see who's there for you, who you can lean on. And when you're a people pleaser and you've always been there for people, and you're the strong friend, and you've been like the shoulder for people to cry on, they oftentimes don't know how to deal with it when it's you. When it's you that needs a shoulder to cry on, they oftentimes don't know how to do that. So it may come off as your friend not really being supportive of you. Um my therapist said like that I needed to take inventory of my friends, see who was there, who wasn't. Um and you just have to do what you will with that. Either you feel like they just don't know what to say, or you say, you know what, I've been there for them and I really need somebody. Is I'm not going to be able to talk to them because I don't want to do the whole trauma dumping thing, because that's what I was doing for almost a year. Like, just a mess. Just a mess. But I'm glad that I was able to lean heavily on my friends, because without my friends and the people in my corner, I would not have been able to make it through this. So my therapist told me to lean on them. So you the strong friend, I know you looking, I know you listening. Stop being so strong all the time. You do not have to be strong all the time. So with that being said, y'all utilize the tools, go to therapy, use your tribe. That's what they're there for. I'm sure that you will be there for them in their time of need. So let them be there for you. We oftentimes have this thing where I just want to do it on my own. I just want to do it in silence. Well, sometimes we don't do it right. Sometimes we just don't do it right. And so, in all honesty, let them be there. Let them be the people that they want to be to you, and let them cook. They know what that's what the young kids say, right? They say let them cook. Um But we are at the end of this episode. I want to say thank you if you made it to the end of this episode. I hope that I have helped you. I hope that what I have said registers with you. If you decide to power through school, do it. If you decide that you need to take a break, take your break. If you decide that nursing ain't for you no more after going through what you went through, more power to you as well. Like, I hope that you find what you're passionate about, because a lot of times through grief, we find our passion, we find our purpose, we learn so much about ourselves. So, yeah, do what you need to do for yourself, whatever that looks like. But make sure that you're actually dealing with that grief, because once you decide that you don't want to deal with it, it's going to rear its ugly head again and again and again and again. It's never going to go away. Grief is never going to go away. We just have to find nice ways to deal with it. We have to find the niceties that we can drop on it, because if we don't, we can't properly function. I know it came on my dad's birthday, came up like the 24th of September, and as soon as it hit 12 o'clock, I was at work crying. And like, I'm crying, I'm crying, I'm crying. I don't know what to do with the pain and the emotions. And I have to tap back into the tools that I was given. So, y'all, if you made it to the end of this episode, I appreciate you for listening, watching, what have you. Go email us any of your questions at the Evolve Nurse podcast. If you want to come on to the Evolve Nurse, email me as well, or DM me on the Evolve Nurse on Instagram. Thank you for listening. This is not a very happy topic, but something that we really need to deal with in the community itself. But I really, really want to be intentional about the content that I put out. Will never have a black have my Okay, so this is my actual room, y'all. This is the office that I am designing right now. So I am about to be like putting art on my walls and stuff like that. But in the midst of things, I was normally using the AI backdrop on my other videos, but I don't know where my tripod is. I cannot find my tripod, and normally my baby probably put it in his hiding spot. So we're gonna look for it. But the upgraded system is not on the computers yet. They haven't tested it on the computers. So it's only on my iPhone, and I might be able to put it on my MacBook, but until I'm done with like my backdrop and stuff, I really didn't want to come on camera because of this. But we gonna post it on the YouTube anyway. We gonna post it on YouTube anyway. So if you have any questions, comments, how to get in touch with a therapist, there are so many avenues that you can go to. Meet me in the comment section of the Evolve Nurse on Instagram. Y'all have a great day. And again, my condolences to you because loss is never easy.